Deep inside the frozen waste of Greenland lies a secret worth more than any gold mine today. It is a city of steel and ice that the United States government once tried to hide. Imagine a place where 200 soldiers lived and worked beneath a massive moving sheet of ice. This was not a small base for simple research, but a mobile nuclear arsenal for war. It represented the ultimate gamble in a game of global chess between two massive nuclear powers. Today, this frozen secret is turning into an environmental and financial nightmare for three different nations. The story begins in the late 1950s during the peak of the nuclear arms race era. Both superpowers realized that their fixed missile silos were very easy for the enemy to target accurately. They needed a way to keep their nuclear weapons moving and invisible to any Soviet surveillance. This led them to the remote and frozen interior of the massive island known as Greenland. The ice sheet there covers over 660,000 square miles of harsh and empty land. Military leaders believed this vast white desert could hide a massive network of secret missile tracks. They called this ambitious plan Project Iceworm, and it remains one of the boldest ideas ever conceived. The first step was to build a proof-of-concept base that they called Camp Century. Construction on this hidden city started in the year 1959, about 150 miles inland. Engineers used massive Swiss snowplows to carve deep trenches into the dense and heavy snow. These machines were originally designed to clear mountain passes in the high peaks of the European Alps. They carved over 20 tunnels and covered them with steel arches and a thick layer of snow. The main street of this underground city stretched for more than 1100 feet through the ice. It contained a movie theater and a library and even a fully equipped modern medical hospital facility. There was even a barber shop and a chapel to keep the spirits of the soldiers high. The center of this entire operation was the first portable nuclear power plant in the world. This reactor was known as the PM2A, and it provided heat and light underground. It weighed over 400 tons and arrived in pieces to be assembled in the freezing cold. This was a miracle of engineering because metal becomes very brittle when the temperature is that low. The soldiers lived in prefabricated wooden buildings that were tucked safely inside the massive ice tunnels. They rarely saw the sun during the long Arctic winter and lived in a world of shadows. The army conducted secret psychological tests to see if men could survive this level of deep isolation. Surprisingly, the soldiers managed to stay healthy and productive despite the dark and the extreme cold. While the public heard stories about scientific research, the real mission was much more dangerous and secret. The Pentagon wanted to build 4,000 kilometers of tunnels to house 600 nuclear missiles underground. These missiles would move constantly on rail cars so that the Soviet Union could never track them. This would create a strike force that was completely invisible to any satellite or spy plane above. It was a brilliant strategic concept that seemed to offer total security in an age of terror. But the engineers had overlooked one major physical reality about the nature of the Greenland ice sheet. Ice is not a solid rock but behaves like a very slow-moving and thick liquid over time. The massive weight of the snow causes the ice to flow slowly toward the sea every year. By 1962, the walls of the tunnels were already starting to close in on the buildings. The ceiling of the reactor room dropped by more than 5 feet in only 2 short years. Workers had to spend thousands of hours just shaving ice off the walls to keep tunnels open. The railway tracks for the missiles began to warp and twist as the floor beneath them shifted. It became clear that maintaining a massive city inside a moving glacier was an impossible financial task. Project Iceworm was officially cancelled in 1963 because the ice would not stop its movement. The nuclear reactor was removed, but many other things were left behind in the dark frozen tunnels. The military assumed that the constant snowfall would bury the waste forever under a shield of ice. They left behind thousands of tons of steel and nearly 50,000 gallons of radioactive cooling water. There were also millions of liters of raw sewage and toxic chemicals known as polychlorinated biphenyls or PCBs. These chemicals are very dangerous because they do not break down and they enter the food chain. For several decades, nobody worried about the mess because it was buried under 30 meters of ice. But the world is heating up much faster than any scientist in the 60s could have predicted. The assumption of eternal burial is now being challenged by the reality of a warming global climate. In the year 2016, a team of scientists published a study that shocked the entire world. They used climate models to show that the ice at Camp Century could start to melt soon. If the ice melts, the toxic waste will reach the ocean and poison the local marine life. This would be a disaster for the indigenous people who rely on the sea for their food. It also creates a massive legal nightmare regarding who is responsible for the final cleanup. Greenland is now a semi-autonomous nation and they want Denmark to take the primary responsibility. Denmark argues that the United States built the base and should be the ones to pay. The United States has remained mostly silent because the legal agreements from that era are very vague. This is a classic example of how old military secrets can become modern financial and political liabilities. We are seeing a high-stakes game of hot potato as each nation tries to avoid the bill. The cost of a full cleanup in such a remote location would be billions of dollars. Moving heavy equipment across the ice sheet is still just as difficult today as it was then. There are no roads, and the weather can turn deadly in a matter of only a few minutes. Recently, NASA used advanced radar to map the site from the air with incredible new detail. They found that the city is still there, but it is being crushed by the immense pressure. The images show the bones of a dead city that is slowly waking up from its sleep. This discovery has forced the issue back into the headlines for leaders in all three involved nations. The melting ice is not just an environmental problem but a threat to Arctic security and peace. As the ice disappears, new shipping lanes are opening and nations are competing for natural resources. Whoever controls the land will have to deal with the toxic legacy of the Cold War era. Some experts believe the waste will stay frozen for another 100 years, which gives us some time. But relying on the stability of a glacier in a warming world is a very risky gamble. This story also has a strange twist, because the base actually helped save the modern world. While the soldiers were there, they drilled deep into the ice to take long core samples. These ice cores contained tiny bubbles of air that were trapped thousands of years in the past. Scientists used these bubbles to measure how much carbon dioxide was in the atmosphere long ago. This provided the first real evidence that the climate of our planet can change very quickly. The very base that was built for war ended up providing the tools to understand climate change. It is an incredible irony that a nuclear project helped us understand the danger of global warming. In 2019, scientists found old dirt samples from the base that had been lost for decades. They found remains of ancient plants which proved that Greenland was once a green and lush land. This means the ice sheet has melted before, and it could certainly happen again in our lifetime. The discovery changed our understanding of how fragile the Arctic environment really is to small changes. Now we are left with a massive silent city that is slowly moving toward the coast. It is a monument to human hubris and the belief that we can control the natural world. The financial implications are massive because sovereign debt and liability are tied to this frozen ground. If Greenland becomes fully independent, they will inherit a mess they did not even help to create. They will likely demand compensation from the United States or Denmark to handle the toxic waste. This could lead to a long legal battle in international courts that lasts for many decades. The Arctic is becoming a crowded place with Russia and China also looking for more influence there. A dispute between allies over old nuclear waste is the last thing the Western world needs. It shows how the past is never truly buried and can return to haunt us at any time. We must learn to think about the long-term consequences of our most secret and bold plans. The engineers of 1959 thought they were building a permanent fortress for the American people. They never imagined that the very ground they built on would melt away under their feet one day. This is a lesson for every business leader and politician who ignores the reality of our environment. The costs of cleaning up a mess are always higher than the cost of doing it right. We are now watching history thaw out in real time and the results will be very messy. Every year, the ice gets a little thinner and the secret gets a little closer to the surface. It is no longer a question of if the waste will emerge, but a question of when. We need a clear plan and international cooperation to solve this problem before the ocean is poisoned. The legacy of Camp Century is a warning about the hidden costs of the pursuit of power. As the geopolitical fuses burn on 3 continents, the world is waiting to see who acts first. This is not just a story from the history books, but a living crisis for our modern age. We must face the truth of what lies beneath the ice before it is too late. The forgotten city is waiting, and its message is one that we can no longer ignore. If you want to see how other secret projects are changing our world today, stay tuned. We will continue to track the financial and political shifts in the Arctic as the ice melts. Would you like me to look into the specific legal treaties that govern American military bases on foreign soil?